Yay! Day 215 of the grown-ups back in charge. And yes, our glorious Labour government. The first government in history that's going to make socialism work. They just need to use a bit more force, try a bit harder, and wield a bit more power to usher in Communism 2.0. And it's all going to be delivered by Britain's first woman chancellor. How embarrassing for women. What has this feminist banker, whose CV is about as trustworthy as a Gary Barlow tax return, actually achieved so far in the name of the fairer sex? Well, she's taken growth from 0.5% to a near recessionary 0.1%. Unemployment is up, business sentiment is down, and she's replaced the paintings in the Treasury with artwork done by ladies. Oh, and she's ripped out the men's urinals. If that doesn't turn Britain into an economic superpower, nothing will. Of course, this shouldn't be about gender, but about the best person for the job, which Rachel Reeves is not. And if we're going to play the biology card, there's a contrast between Britain's first woman chancellor, who appears to hate capitalism, or at the very least, not understand it by thinking that taxing businesses will create growth. And then there's Britain's first woman prime minister in 1979, Mrs. Thatcher, who embraced capitalism and free markets and turned Britain into a global economic powerhouse. Sadly, Rachel Reeves is more Iron Curtain than Iron Lady, as revealed by today's shocking statistics. Britain's growth outlook has been slashed for the whole of 2025 as the economy struggles with eye-watering tax rises, spiralling borrowing costs, and a total collapse in business confidence. In just the 2 months following Rachel from Accounts' ill-fated budget, which makes Liz Truss's mini budget look like a masterclass in economic prudence, 4,500 companies have shut down, the biggest quarterly increase in business closures since the first lockdown. 12,000 millionaires have left the country, one every 45 minutes since the October budget. And business leaders have accused the Chancellor of creating a hostile environment for businesses by introducing draconian red tape, which will make it harder to get rid of crap members of staff, and a national insurance tax raid on businesses, which is already seeing layoffs. Now, I know Labour are a nostalgic political party and want to bring back some great British things from the past, but I didn't realise that spiralling unemployment was one of them. Only a government which thinks a bloke in a dress is a woman could possibly also think that you grow the economy by shrinking it, which is exactly what's happening. Now, the prestigious EY Item Club have downgraded Britain's growth prospects to a measly 1% for the whole of the year, way below the Bank of England's predictions. And the social ill of unemployment is expected to reach 4.6%. Yes, the dole queue is the only thing that our first woman chancellor is actually growing. Now, here's the great irony. As we celebrate 5 years of Brexit, it is our decision to leave the European Union which will save us from Donald Trump's tariffs. Hilarious that commentators on establishment media couldn't bring themselves to mention the B word of Brexit this week, given the fact that we will be spared the consequences of Donald Trump's punishment beating of the EU, whose trading terms with the bloc work against America's national interest. Here is Donald Trump being characteristically forthright before boarding Air Force One, where no doubt a presidential family bucket from KFC awaits him.
It will definitely happen with the European Union, I can tell you that, because they've really taken advantage of us. And, we have over a $300 billion deficit. They don't take our cars. They don't take our farm products. They take almost nothing. And we take everything from them, millions of cars, tremendous amounts of food and farm products. But the European Union it's an atrocity, what they've done.
Powerful stuff from Trump there. Well, the party is over because the Americans have elected someone that actually cares about America and someone that understands business. Meanwhile, we have an administration here who have waged war on business and would rather send billions abroad and indulge in an expensive open borders policy that puts Brits in the second position. Millions sent to Ukraine and Gaza, and supposedly poor and needy countries like China, India and Brazil through foreign aid. You couldn't make it up. But let's be honest, our Prime Minister Keir Starmer is a globalist's wet dream, freely admitting in an interview a couple of years ago that he prefers Davos in Switzerland and his mates from the World Economic Forum than Westminster, the actual home of our representative democracy. Meanwhile, Labour is watering down border laws designed to block illegal immigrants from obtaining citizenship. The Home Office is repealing rules introduced by the Tories that meant that small boat arrivals could never become UK citizens. It's also revoking legislation which gave ministers the power to treat asylum seekers who refuse to undergo scientific age checks as adults, which means more 25-year-old men pretending that they're 14 and learning GCSE Spanish with more facial hair than a Yeti. Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary, said the move was a total capitulation to people smugglers and would make the UK a soft touch of Europe. Well, he's absolutely right. How ironic that the Prime Minister, a human rights lawyer, should place human rights before the needs and safety of the British public. Across the West, governments are closing their borders, tightening immigration, and publishing data on the true costs of immigration from certain countries. Writing in the Telegraph newspaper, the fearless Tory MP Nick Timothy points out that Denmark have been able to demonstrate that immigration from outside Europe is a fiscal burden. Sweden are taking measures to increase deportation. They've got immigration down to 0. Meanwhile, the UK is doing the opposite. The new immigration bill has been labelled a charter for mass migration, a gateway for illegal immigrants to stay in the UK for good, and a signal to millions of people around the world that the British welfare state is available to them. Of course, making Britain more welcoming to those who enter the country illegally has been a clear policy from Labour even before they achieved power, with our numpty PM proudly announcing before the election that he would scrap the Rwanda plan even, and I quote, if it works. You couldn't make it up. Of course, the Irish were complaining it was working before it even started, and now it's gone. This is a government working against the will and the best interests of its own people. The illegal boat crossings are a national security, economic and humanitarian disaster. And mark my words, they will increase under this ultra-progressive administration. Starmer wants to smash the gangs, but he couldn't smash a plate at a Greek wedding. Meanwhile, the junior doctors and nurses are threatening to strike again, even though they got a bumper, unaffordable, inflationary pay rise when Labour got in. I seem to remember saying at the time that if you give the unions an inch, they will take a mile. Well, it's happened. Plus, British industry is now collapsing, including the car industry, which employs almost 1 million people. Why is it collapsing? Because of the act of national economic suicide that is net zero. A religion so deranged, it makes Scientology look grounded in rational thought. Frankly, I'd rather Tom Cruise was running the country, because with this lot, it is mission impossible. Famously, when Labour were in power in the 1970s, Britain suffered the winter of discontent, which saw blackouts, bodies unburied in the street, bins not emptied, everyone on strike, and the UK, the architect of the Industrial Revolution, the home of the British Empire, having to go begging to the International Monetary Fund just to keep the lights on. Well, here's the thing. That was only one winter of discontent. We've got 4 more years of discontent that lie ahead, and there's nothing we can do about it other than ensure that there is an economic, political, and cultural revolution in 2029. Because if that doesn't happen, and if Labour achieve another 5 years in power, we are over as a country. But I don't think it'll happen. I think sweet freedom whispers in our ear. We're just going to have to wait for it. So in the meantime, my advice, buy a tent, buy some tins of baked beans, and buy candles. Because if Britain's first woman chancellor carries on like this, you'll probably need them. Thanks for watching. Now, to see the whole show, ad-free and uncensored, plus bonus material, head to my Substack at markdolan.com.